Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here, and returning to the show from the Turn on the Jets podcast, Will Parkinson, Mr. Cortland D3 himself, on to break down Vikings and Jets. No one in my audience understands that, but if you came from New York, you would. What is up, Mr. Parkinson? How you doing, buddy?
Good, man. Good. I'm excited. We get to have a little bit more of an exciting quarterback matchup in this version of Jets Vikings. I'm excited for a team. This matchup I think everyone was really looking forward to before the year. Just Rodgers against the NFC North again, and London game. And I was more optimistic about the Vikings than most people, but I did not expect 4-0. And so yeah, no, I'm excited to get into it.
Well, we actually do have the receipts. You did say that in the offseason. You did say that you would not be surprised if Sam Darnold came to Minnesota and played well. But, you're a football guy. You played football. You're a big dude. You're tough. But I want to talk about your emotions, okay? I want to talk about how it feels for somebody who watched what Darnold dealt with in New York, how that all went down, to then be 4-0 with another franchise.
So I think this is a conversation around Sam and young quarterbacks, and Kevin O'Connell obviously talked a lot about a lot of times teams can kind of ruin quarterbacks more than honestly quarterbacks can sometimes ruin themselves. And Rodgers talked about for about as Rodgers always does for about 25 minutes on this topic. McAfee, I thought his comments were actually extremely insightful when it comes to football. I'm not sure there's a better person. Rodgers is gonna be way better than Brady in the booth. Just hold me to that. But I think the Sam thing was always the Jets were largely at fault. But Sam, to his own, I think, admission, he talked about it today with the media or yesterday. I'm not sure when that clip was from. Hey, I didn't play well enough, and Sam didn't. He had moments, and I think this comes back to the Carolina Panthers had Baker and Sam on their roster, two guys who we'll see if Sam's able to continue this throughout the rest of the year and kind of become this year's Baker in terms of does he earn, from Minnesota a 2-year extension and they let JJ sit another year? Who knows? That's obviously a conversation for another day, but I'm extremely happy for Sam because he always handled himself like an complete pro, faced the media, took questions on Gase and Le'Veon Bell for years and some really bad Jets teams, frankly. And I think Jets fans around the country, obviously mostly in New York, New Jersey, are all really happy for him. He's not in the Jets, conference, so it's not like he's tearing it up with the Patriots and stuff like that. And so I just think that the fan base and myself, I'm extremely happy for him. I wish it would have worked here. It didn't. But yes, there was a path to trading back, and you draft Sewell or Devontae Smith and all that stuff, and maybe it would have worked, but. I'm happy he cannot be in a better situation coaching staff wise, talent wise, and honestly division wise right now. Like this kind of felt like a perfect match at the time when we talked about it in April or whatever that was. And it feels even more like a perfect match now. He's an MVP frontrunner.
Yeah, I mean, and he has played comfortably. He has been a leader for the offense. He has come through in the very few situations where he has needed to be clutch. There is a rule for that. There's a rule for that. When your dog barks in the background, you have to make a dog pun. Okay. So that's your next challenge here after I throw this back to you. But Darnold has been just so comfortable with this situation and with Kevin O'Connell, with his wide receivers. And he looks very happy out there playing football. Like he is playing fast. He's playing on time for the most part, outside of a handful of plays against the Green Bay Packers. I want to know from you what it was in New York specifically that made him the quarterback that he was there, because we can kind of go, yeah, it was Gase and it was, maybe the receivers and whatever, but is there something lurking around the corner that we haven't seen yet with Darnold that took him down there? Or is this just a totally different person?
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of both. I think Sam's a guy who I don't believe played quarterback until high school. Like wasn't like this. He was a linebacker if I'm not mistaken up until high school, and I think even in high school he played like he wasn't a guy who got to USC as this elite 11. Had been playing quarterback since he's 4 years old, and his dad's been training him, doing quarterback drills, reading cover 2 and cover 3 defenses. Sam's biggest issues at USC, his biggest issues with the Jets, and I think have always been ball security in terms of just a little loose with the football at times, kind of a little bit out to lunch, for lack of a better term, or and just just a little loose with it, right? And then the second thing was kind of overthinking at times. It felt like when Sam got in a rhythm and he was confident and just letting it rip, there's very few guys that could throw the football better than him. But it was this, especially against the Patriots, against other teams, where he would see a multitude of different coverages, didn't feel it, and then would start to kind of spiral. And that's kind of the two things with Sam. And it feels like this year he's done a good job of Kevin O'Connell's limited how much thinking he's had to do. And again, that's not an insult to Sam. He's just like, Sam's not the highest football IQ guy you're ever going to see. He's extremely talented and he's smart, but he's not like, again, he's not a cerebral genius, that's going to be like, that's why he's kind of a weird backup quarterback, just because like, he's not like a guy who's going to mentor a young player. He's like the guy that sometimes needed to be mentored. And he sat with Kyle and, for a year, and now he's been with O'Connell. So it's that. And then the ball security, we've seen Sam a couple of times this year, the San Francisco game in particular. He did throw it forward, but he almost Will Levis'd one. And you're like, Sam, like, it just feels like this year he's limited the pumpkin moments for Sam. He had a couple like self sacks with the Jets where he'd like run out of bounds and you're like, throw the ball away. Like, he's going to throw it away, right? And then he like took a 5-yard sack. He's just limited those mistakes. And then we've seen, obviously, when you have a Justin Jefferson now with Jordan Addison back and Aaron Jones, like, kind of just everyone calming him down. And when he's playing, like I said, when he's playing confident, he's a guy that is very special. It's just, again, limiting those, oh man, what are you doing moments. And O'Connell mixed with maturity in year 7 now. He's in his mid-20s. He's kind of, some of that's out of his game, at least through a month or so here.
It's so funny about how thin the margins are, and you didn't mix in the dog pun, so I'm disappointed.
Oh, I'm getting one. I have one in the back pocket.
Keep that in the back of your mind. I'm ready for that, because he has had that dog in him so far. But to your point, he has had a couple of the moments, and he's gotten away with them so far. And I think that if even when he has those mistakes, like a red zone interception, which he's now had in 2 games out of his 4, that they are so good around him that you can make up for that. That there are other quarterbacks in the league who are very good, who make big mistakes. But if you have Justin Jefferson catching a ball on 3rd and 10, it's flying out of the, out of the sideline and making a Chris Carter catch, or making a Randy Moss catch down the sideline. And then you have open receivers on 3rd downs, and you can have a play action game built off of Aaron Jones. You can afford a mistake or 2 a game and get away with it and still have a top-notch offense and still top-notch performance. It feels like with the Jets that the margins were so thin and the offensive line wasn't very good, so that compounds things when you're getting pressured. But it also feels like he would get in a rut, and then he just would not be seeing anything for weeks on end. And I think that the confidence factor is just going to be huge for him. We haven't seen him get punched in the mouth at all so far this season. When that does happen, how does he quickly get out of that, I think, is probably my biggest question.
Yeah, that's mine too. I think, look, Sam's not going to have 13 more weeks of, maybe he's this year's Kurt Warner and then ends up happening and he turns into a pumpkin 3 years down the line after 2 Super Bowl runs. And maybe that happens. I don't know. I hope for Sam's sake he has extreme amount of success. I just think that the expectations also were so high. He was billed as the savior in New York, and the Jets kind of made it so it was like Sam had to do everything. He was just, the quarterback's going to fix all these other problems. And this kind of feels like the opposite. It was like, hey man, like, no pressure. You're going to come in and, I don't know, I thought he'd probably play 8 or 10 games this year. And then they turned it over to JJ when they were like 4-6, a little Eli Manning, Kurt Warner from the Giants, where like, you're still good and you're going to play in this league and like, you're going to be a free agent and walk after the year. You've got good tape. Thanks for your service. Like, we need to turn it over to the young guy. I just, for me with Sam, I feel like they've done a good job too of not letting him get like flustered with pressure. But the Jets, the offensive line again wasn't great, and it's well documented. And then that division where Buffalo and Miami, that was kind of the years where Miami was blitzing, like playing man 60% of the time. Brian Flores, obviously, and so to me, yes, Sam's going to have moments this year, and I honestly think he might have a little bit of a moment this week where it might be more of like he'll play okay. He might have 1 or 2 turnovers, but you mentioned something there that I think is the biggest difference in that margin for error. Sam still has turned the football over, right? And he's got, I think he's got a fumble and 3 interceptions, if I'm not mistaken. He's also got 11 touchdowns. That's the difference. With the Jets, it was like 200 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, generally speaking. outside of that really, really amazing end of his rookie year. Now it's like, hey, if you're going 275, 3 touchdowns and a pick, you'll take it all day long. So yeah, I just think that he's almost changed his game a little bit. Like he's just taking shots, and like that confidence. Football's so mental, man. Like you could just tell. Like I don't know, Rodgers wasn't feeling it the early on in week 1, right? And like you could tell, week 3, like he came out, they went down there, and Rodgers was like slinging it around, running the football, doing all this crazy stuff, and it's like, oh, even the great ones are on confidence, let alone guys that are, middle of the road starters, I guess.
Right. And I think that coming over to the sideline and having a former NFL quarterback there, and then also having Josh McCown there, has done a lot for him. It's almost like they've designed this ideally. If someone just said to you, hey, what's the best way you could make a quarterback a success? Well, give him the best receiver in the world, a coach who is a former quarterback, a former teammate coach of his quarterback who had been just about everywhere. Oh, yeah, a Pro Bowl running back in the backfield, and they're going to get a tight end back. All of this has come together for him, and he's maximized it in these first few weeks and become one of the best stories in the NFL. But as you mentioned, this Jets defense is still good. Hey, look, the Jets held Bo Nix to 60 yards passing. Did they win? No, but they still played pretty good defensively. And also, Quinnen Williams exists. And anytime the Vikings have faced a monster defensive tackle, it is a problem for them. Give me what you think the game plan for the Jets defense will be against Sam Darnold.
Yeah, I think the game plan. So 2 weeks ago when the Jets played New England, they just blitzed the crap out of the dog crap out of Jacoby Brissett.
There you go.
They think they blitzed on, I believe, 47% of dropbacks. The Jets are usually like 4-man rush. This is what we do. We're going to sit in quarters, sit in cover 3, a little bit of man on third downs. They blitzed them all day long, and I believe I think 7 or 8 sacks, like 47% or 51% pressure rate. Like they got after him. I think you'll see more of that. Last week against Bo Nix, while they had success, they kind of used more of just went back to rushing 4. They had a spy on Bo Nix, and it worked, right? Like you have 10 points, and he threw for 60 yards. So again, the passing defense outside of that Niners game has been quite good. I just think this is a game now where probably should be blitzing more. This is going to be a lights. The whole point of having a Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, Michael Carter is so you can, when you need to play in certain matchups, you don't have to sit back in zone and just. We'll see if the Jets do it. They're pretty stubborn about their scheme. Robert Saleh is like, this is my scheme. This is what we do. We're going to be better than you at what we do. And that's great. And that's a great mentality and talking point and all that stuff. But they did that 2 years ago when they played Minnesota, and it worked fine. But like Minnesota had a bunch of, hey, we're going to get after Kirk Cousins with 4, and we're just going to cover JJ in zone. And like, yeah, JJ wasn't amazing. But Minnesota still won the game. They put up 20 plus points. So it's got to be a little bit of a different strategy. Again, the Jets don't do well against screens. So I would assume if they start blitzing, O'Connell's going to go to more of the screen game with Jones and guys like that. This defense needs to get more takeaways. They're very good. They're very sound. They're very like bend, don't break. They'll give you field goals all day long if you take them between the 20s. I think the one thing that, again, we talked about with Sam is like the way you force Sam into bad mistakes is you speed the game up for him. You muddy the waters. He feels like he's getting hit. Any quarterback, it doesn't matter who it is, right? Rodgers didn't look amazing last week. He got hit 15 times. I think they'll try to blitz a lot more on Sunday. It won't be 6, 7, 8 guys like a Rex Ryan level of blitz, a Wink Martindale type of thing, but it might be, bringing Quincy Williams at times. Maybe it's bringing a corner, a slot corner blitz. Like just integrating stuff in there and changing up coverages is probably the best way to go to try to beat this Vikings team.
So this offseason, I was following Sauce Gardner on Twitter, and he was taking up golf. Now, I really like golfing. Shocking that a football reporter with no other real discernible physical skill would like golf. But I was enjoying watching someone discover the game. First of all, he needs to understand if there's lightning out there, you do not go play golf when there's lightning. But otherwise, so interesting to watch a pro athlete at the highest level have his own struggles and not understand like how to be consistent with his swing and things like that, talking about trying to hit it too hard, which all of us do. I want you to explain to me Sauce Gardner, but through the terms of golfing. Like what kind of golfer is Sauce Gardner? as a football
Interesting. As
player,
a
if that
football
makes sense.
player,
Yeah. Like
I would
explain
say
him through golf.
Sauce is a this is a good question. Sauce is a guy, like, obviously from a stature perspective is like the former football, basketball classic, like, comes in annoyingly athletic. You're playing with like three other like semi-fat dad white dudes, like, and like it's like, oh, this guy, and like this guy steps up. I've never swung a golf club before and like hits a 285. And I'm saying that because usually that's the comment I get of like, buddy, if you could just hit it straight. I'm like, yeah, I know. I wish I could hit it straight too. Sauce's game is very much extremely technically sound. Fundamentally wise, he is as good as it gets. He can run with anybody, but he also can be physical enough. Really good hands, really good quick feet. So I'd say from like a golfing perspective, he's a guy who his driver, which I would maybe consider like more of like the interception turnover machine type of the Trey Diggs of the world. His driver's okay. But when it comes to his irons, his short game, his putting, he's as good as it gets. He's a guy who, like, if he didn't need to ever take his driver out of his bag, he'd shoot a 70 every day. But he does take his driver out of his bag once in a while, so maybe he shoots a 74, 75.
That is a tremendous description. It's really along the lines of what I was thinking about him as such a consistent technical player. He would be the guy who knows how to spin the ball and just put it right next to the cup where all of us roll it by every single time because we don't know how to do that. You're like, man, why are you so consistent at chipping and putting where everybody else wants to swing the driver? His consistency on a down to down basis every time I see him is just so impressive. And I feel like elite corners always fall in those two buckets. There is either and I think Stephon Gilmore is this way, extremely technical, very consistent, gets more pass breakups than he does pick sixes. And then there is the guy who takes the big risks. The Asante Samuel gets the picks, the Marcus Peters, right? But they're also going to give up the big plays as well. And I think that the technical guy is harder to play against. And the technical golfer is more annoying. I don't care if you smash the drive. I mean, if you're not going to finish with a birdie, then what difference does it make? But this guy is just going to go hole after hole. We won't go any farther with that, but I did enjoy following him. And I think this is a great battle with him and Jefferson. Do you think that he follows Jefferson or do they not really play that way?
So they do it sometimes. It'll be my guess is it'll be like 30 or 40% of third downs or pound of passing situation. The Jets will play man, I don't know, somewhere in the 20s, probably on 30%. I'd let him just follow Jefferson all day long and say, like, let these two guys just go at it and then say, we trust DJ Reed and Michael Carter to be better than your guys. And again, I like Jordan Addison a lot. I mean, I'm a USC guy, so I love Jordan Addison, but he's a guy who, like, Jordan Addison's one thing, it's just extremely, like, he's not a strong player. Like, he, like, physically, like, you can get him off his spot. And he's coming back from an injury in a pretty tumultuous offseason. So again, he's played well last week, but DJ Reed makes a lot of money. Like, you'd hope you could trust him. I just think that you get more burned by saying, like, oh, we're going to take if Justin Jefferson has 15 or 21 targets and he burns Sauce all day long, but the rest of the offense does nothing. I almost feel like that's probably a better strategy than, hey, we're going to make sure, like, he doesn't eat too much. But then I don't know, maybe it leaves, Jefferson on, I don't know, Tony Adams for some reason at some point. And it's like, do we really want that matchup? Like, Sauce Gardner's going to get paid, I don't know, probably 4 years, $105 million in 5 months' time. Like, at some point, maybe just let your guy travel a little bit. I'm not asking to have the Revis treatment where, like, Revis is a one-on-one player. We're never going to see anything like that again. But I don't know, in some third downs, they did last year against Keenan Allen a little bit. They've done it at times, but maybe this week is the week to say, I don't know, let's give him 20 snaps, just man coverage, one-on-one. You take this out of the field. You and JJ are going to go at it and, make Sam make a mistake. Make Sam stare down Justin Jefferson and there's a strip sack, or make him look away from an open Addison because they're so keen on Jeff. Like, that's just, to me, when it comes to it's always the argument with, like, a LeBron in basketball or, other guys where it's like, do you want them to score? When LeBron has 20 assists, they're unbeatable. If LeBron scores 50, like, that means nobody else is doing anything. So I don't know, weird reference, I guess, but it's kind of the same thing a little bit.
No, it makes complete sense. I think that if you're Kevin O'Connell, you're spending the entire week and the entire flight trying to figure out ways to get him away from Sauce Gardner, which this is where O'Connell really cooks the most, is finding ways to get Jefferson on mismatches. There's a lot of those bunch formations. They'll line him up tight to the formation. They will motion him. They've put him in the backfield numerous times so far this year. So he's doing everything and anything to hide Jefferson. And when you put him in those bunches, it's really hard because you have three players going in all different directions for those guys. And oftentimes you just have to play it where you take the side of whichever way the guy goes. And it makes it harder for someone like Sauce Gardner to just stay on him. But if Gardner is staying on him, then you know that, and then you can do some pick stuff. And the cat and mouse game between these two teams, and I have a ton of respect for Robert Saleh as a defensive mind, is going to be super fun to watch. But we have gone too far without talking about Aaron Rodgers. My thing is, people have heard me say it all week. I'll say it again. Don't look at last week and say, oh, well, Rodgers is cooked or something like that. You are just asking for it because people thought a little bit of the same thing. I want to say, was it around 2018 where they had a bad year in Green Bay, and then 2022 wasn't really going the same, and then he demolished the Vikings. But where does he stand right now? Because this is a different human being with a repaired Achilles.
Yeah, I mean, look, he ran for like 30 yards last week. He's been moving really well the last 2 weeks. He did get banged up at the end of that. He took a lot of shots last week. The Jets' offensive line the first 3 weeks was a top 5 unit in terms of pass pro. They were horrendous on Sunday. Everyone on that team was. Breece Hall played the worst game he'll ever play in his life. Like, I'm talking Pop Warner to the NFL. He has never played that bad. Negative 16 rushing yards over expected. He gave up a sack and a half, and the drop, and 2 false start penalties. That doesn't tell you a guy is just like not mentally in it for a game. He'll be much better this week. I'm not sure you could possibly be worse. Garrett Wilson struggled, but like Rodgers overall, the arm's still awesome. The mobility is actually better than I think anyone thought after 2 weeks, and definitely probably better than anyone expected coming into the year. He's had 2 really good quarters against Tennessee. He had a full game worth of really good quarters, obviously against New England, and probably like a quarter and a half good against Denver. They've only had 1 game where they've played a complete game of offense. When Rodgers gets going, and they stack together first downs, they pretty much score every time. It's like they're 12 play, 75-yard drives for over a 9-minute stretch, and it's like this is surgical Rodgers. His numbers against the Vikings all time are astronomical. Obviously, I think I tweeted that's like 7,000 yards, 57 touchdowns, 8 picks in 29 games. Obviously, Vikings fans are very familiar with that. But the one thing I think with Rodgers right now is he doesn't have full trust in everybody around him. And I think that could be taken advantage of. It's also the Jets play calling, frankly, it's going to be one of 2 ways on Sunday, because this is the way it's been pretty much through the first, 20 games of Nate Hackett being the Jets offensive coordinator. Their offense either looks awesome against New England. Game plan was fantastic. The second half against Tennessee, really good. Or, even last year against Houston, Hackett had a great game plan against D'Amico Ryans. I mean, he made Zach Wilson look like not the worst NFL player we've ever seen. Like, it was impressive. There's also other games where if it doesn't go like what he thought it was going to be going to the week, let's just say he goes into this game and says Flores is going to blitz Rodgers because that's what Denver did, which probably is what's going to happen, and he should do that, right? The Jets didn't prove they could stop it. I'm not sure what the Jets' game plan was last week, because Vance Joseph, I think, brought pressure with Denver, like the highest rate in the NFL coming into the week. They brought it even more than they brought pressure the time before, and they beat up Rodgers a little bit, and the Jets didn't adjust. So I think Vikings fans are going to see a pretty similar version of Rodgers to what they're used to. It'll look a little different. We'll see that the field conditions and different things like that. It's kind of always hard to tell with these international games. But generally speaking, I don't think you should expect too much different than what we've seen. Even if he's not 100% peak MVP Rodgers, he's still ability-wise pretty close to that. It's just a matter of, did him and Garrett Wilson get into a rhythm early? Does the Jets play calling? Did the Jets do a good job of picking up some of Minnesota's early blitzes and things like that? Because if they do, and actually use a screen or some type of thing to not just do Aaron Rodgers drop back and no motion type of stuff, which is possible, then it'll look very similar to Vikings fans, kind of what they're familiar with.
The blitz part of it is really interesting to me because the Vikings have mixed and matched this year rather than just blitzing all the time. But it's so funny in the NFL, and this is why it is the week to week league, is because you get smoked on a blitz the 1 week. And then, of course, the next team says, well, we're going to do that too. We're going to take advantage of that. But the Jets have spent all week trying to figure that out. If you do have a running back that isn't picking up pass pro, I think against Brian Flores, that is going to be a major, major problem. It's just that the Vikings can send people from so many different spots. And this is why they're using Blake Cashman sometimes as a decoy blitzer to have edge rushers get opportunities. You're seeing safeties coming on blitzes, linebackers. Josh Metellus is kind of both. That looks like it could be very difficult. With the Rodgers thing, though, it isn't so much to me, can he still throw the football, or can they protect him, or can they run around him? It's really about how this is vibe-wise for the Jets. I know that people can make too much of certain things, like going on vacation in the offseason during minicamp and all that. That became a big discussion. But vibes-wise, it's been odd. And last week, it was just odd when they show Garrett Wilson running a route. He turns around. Wait, where did you think I was supposed to be? Rodgers is looking at him. And as marvelous as Rodgers was against the Vikings so many times, the times that he wasn't, he was always looking at his receivers like, what were you doing? I was doing something else. I told you to do whatever. The offensive line struggling with the cadence thing, which the word cadence is really having a week on television. I mean, what is happening here? What is that? Because that, I think, is the thing holding them back, not him throwing a football.
Yeah, look, I think the biggest thing, and you mentioned the Vikings defense, is like they give up a ton of yards, but they also have taken the football away a ton. So, if you can, it's the give and take there. Yeah, Rodgers and this offense, like Rodgers has always been a body language guy. It is what it is, right? Brady did it all the time. Peyton used to do it. Like these great quarterbacks just expect, they're so competitive, they're so intense, they expect perfection on every throw. Rodgers had a few misses on Sunday. He had one to Brees Hall, one to Tyler Conklin that, like, I don't know if it's the weather, I don't know what it was, but he missed them and he owned that. The cadence thing was as a joke. I think it's one of Saleh's stupidest comments he's made since he's been in charge of the Jets. Rodgers' cadence is a legitimate weapon. I mean, Vikings fans know better than anybody. Like he's already had 2 free play touchdowns this year. Like it's what he does, and it gets them in advantageous situations. It's able to help him, diagnose what the defense is going to do, as well as not just jump off sides, but like Jason McCourty on ESPN talked about today when Flores was in New England. They were like, hey, every time Rodgers takes his hands out of his hand warmer, he's gonna, we're gonna go back to where we are. And he said Rodgers would killed them, on cadences because they would jump early and Devin McCourty and Jason McCourty would fly out and go back and like try to go deep half. And Rodgers like, oh, you're a cover 2. Cool. Now I know what you're doing. Rodgers trusts Lazard right now. He trusts Mike Williams to an extent. Him and Garrett not being on the same page is extremely confusing. And I say it for 2 reasons. One, every camp practice I was at was just like watching Brady to Moss or, Culpepper to Moss and Card. Like they were just torching people, whether it was, joint practices, their own practice. Like they could not have been more on the same page. Garrett's pressing right now, I think, to some extent, where him and Brees both are ascending superstar level talents in this league and have shown moments where they're superstars, but so much of like finally got the quarterback and, and we're getting all this respect and love. And then it was just like, I think they're like almost expecting it to happen now, and hasn't fully happened. And it's like you start pressing more and more. It'll get corrected. I don't worry too much about those guys in terms of long term. I just think that was one of those games where like the play calling was bad, the weather sucked. It was a lot of like we just came off and everything was rolling. What's happening here? I'm kind of not happy it happened, but in a sense, kind of lit a little bit of a fire under their ass in terms of both those guys getting it right, and then also like it probably is going to push them into getting Devontae in the next 3 to 4 days. Like that's sometimes a loss, like a loss you might look back on as a good thing. Again, the Jets have to respond, and if they don't win, probably at least 2 of the next 4. Minnesota, home Buffalo, at Pittsburgh, and then home, at New England. Then it's a different conversation. Then this wasn't a good loss. It's a frustrating loss, and it's the vibes coming out of there, again, cadence thing, the not on the same page. A lot of just like New York mixed with Rodgers, mixed with, a bad performance. This is what's going to happen because the week before, hey, Rodgers the MVP conversation. Look at this throw to Garrett Wilson. The Jets are going 15-1 or 15-2. Like week to week league, man. This is what it is.
Exactly. Well, and this is, I think, the Vikings' biggest concern because, of course, the Vikings going in 4-0 are feeling like they should win this game, and their fans are feeling like they should win this game or the better team. But with you just don't really want to play a team that came off a game where they're starting to have a panic week because then you get, and we're just going to set a record for cliches here, but the kitchen sink game is real where a team starts to feel it. If we don't turn around right now, we're in a lot of trouble, kind of a desperation type of situation. Whereas the Vikings are coming in, everyone's talking about how great they are. The vibes are very good. Everyone is very happy. It's just, there's a little bit of a clash there of one team feels like it's cruising. Another team feels like it better win this football game or this season is potentially going to be a calamity. And that's I think a scary proposition for the Vikings. Now, what do you want to know from me? What are Jets fans interested on the Vikings side of things?
Yeah, like is this defense real? I think it's the real question is because Flores's defenses over the years, I think, it's been really good at times, and then there's been kind of later in the season, and sometimes it's like people kind of figure him out a little bit, and figure out some of the pressure rate. I think a lot of the players in this team they've got a lot of good players. I think this is more of a group of like talented group, but not. This isn't the Niners defense of 3 or 4 years ago where it's like 3 all pros at every spot. It's a lot of good players. Like whatever. How good do you think this defense actually is? Is it really the best defense in the league, or is this more like it's a top 10 group that's playing out of their mind right now?
Yeah, I think that it does have a case for being the best in the league. Now, part of this is they play Rodgers, then Goff, then Stafford in these next few games. So the tests will continue. But I think last year it was so much about blitzing. It was so much about confusion for the other teams that eventually, when they had a few players get hurt and they were doing the same thing week after week, that opponents started to figure them out at the end of the year. Cincinnati was really the one that figured them out. And then everybody copied that from there on after. And it was not the same defense as it was early in the year. The biggest difference is all the talent that they brought in. You are very familiar with Andrew Van Ginkel and how good he is. I feel like only AFC East observers know how good this gentleman is at football. But Jonathan Grenard had 12 and a half sacks last year. He's getting about 5 or 6 pressures a game, at least for the Vikings. Blake Cashman, who you said, hey, watch out for Blake Cashman. This guy's going to be good. And Gophers fans and Jets fans united over that one. But he's been phenomenal, not just okay, actually phenomenal, total game changer for this defense. He's great in coverage. He's great at blitzing. He is a hard tackler. And then really, to me, the person who pushed this defense over the edge was Stephon Gilmore, that he looks great. He looks young for someone who's 35 years old, and that other teams just don't even throw at him. There is a legitimate fear of throwing at Stephon Gilmore still that we see from opponents. I think last week the Packers targeted Byron Murphy 15 times and Gilmore 3. And that just kind of tells you where it's at. So if you have so few weaknesses, if the weakest player on your defense is Byron Murphy Jr., a proven starter over years, that has been so massively upgraded for them. And to have a more dynamic pass rush that's not just Danielle Hunter and blitzes, but actually 3 or 4 guys that can get after the passer or more, has made it really impressive. And he's just advanced. He's got all these veteran players. You're not trying to cover up for any rookies. He can put everything on their plate and these guys can handle it. So where the real battle is this week is the checks at the line of scrimmage. Rodgers loves that. He gets to the line of scrimmage, but this defense is built so Cashman can check or Harrison Smith can check at any time. So they'd go back and forth. Well, they're going to check out of a play. They're going to show a coverage. Then they're going to change that. That cat and mouse game between him and Harrison Smith for years has been phenomenal. And I think specifically for this game, it really will be with what Flores has designed.
Yeah, no, it makes a ton of sense. That's kind of how I feel on the Vikings defense. I just like, you watch it. Not only back on tape, but obviously obviously in person every week. So or on TV, obviously. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel with this defense. I think it's a really good unit, and I think it's going to stay as a top 10 unit all year.
Okay, here's what I want to do to end the show, Will. I have a list here of players who played for the Vikings and Jets, and my God, is it glorious. We've got everything from deep cuts to superstars, Darnold, Favre, Bubby Brister, Jay Fiedler, the crossover players here. Ty Conklin is another one who I enjoyed covering. Tyler Conklin, really nice guy and a good player. I'm going to read you just some more names. And then after I read you those names, I want you to tell me which one of these is your favorite crossover Viking / New York Jet. Scotty Graham, Percy Harvin, of course, Percy Harvin. The very brief Dalvin Cook run, Tony Richardson. We have also Jermaine Wiggins, Sheldon Richardson, one of my favorite players to cover, a really, really unique guy. Tom Compton gets thrown in here, and I'll throw this one out there because it's funny. Vlad Dukas. They would ask Teddy Bridgewater about his leadership, and he would say, well, this is everybody's team. It's my team. It's Vlad Dukas's team. It's like, why did you pick Vlad for this? He did it multiple times. And so that's why I remember Vlad Dukas. What is your favorite? Oh, and Brooks Bollinger, who I know.
Yeah, so I'll go my least favorite is Dalvin Cook, by far.
Didn't work out.
No. Tough. Not sure he particularly tried at any point last year. I will say my two favorite in terms of personality, Tony Richardson and Tyler Conklin, both like elite guys. If you're do what we do, like they're as good as it gets in terms of like giving you real answers and giving you a lot of stuff. Brooks Bollinger, I'm going to go with is a wild card that you just threw in there strictly because any Jets fan knows, like in the list of ridiculous quarterbacks that have like played more games than they should have for them, he's a sneaky one. And I guess one other name you mentioned, there obviously the Percy Harvin thing was always weird. Just that, I don't know. I don't know what really happened with Percy. I think, some of the concussions and different things, obviously in the body, but like what a talented player, man. What a special talent. I'm not sure the Jets fans really ever got to see full Percy Harvin, but it was an extremely fun player in his day.
I don't know if anyone actually got to see full Percy Harvin. But the highlight reel is as great. He was like a better, this is crazy to say, but I think it's true. I think he was a better Tyreek Hill. I think he was as explosive, as dynamic, and even more versatile than Tyreek Hill is, which is crazy to say, but it's absolutely true. There was a YouTuber who put together every touchdown he ever scored, and 90% of them just blow your mind with Percy Harvin, but both sides never really got to see that one fully realized. Also, nobody's talking about how this is a Chaz Surratt revenge game.
Yeah, we're not talking enough about that.
No one's talking about it. Former quarterback, drafted
third rounder, right?
Carolina. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So anyway, well, this should be an interesting game. Who do you think wins?
I got the Jets 24-20. I think they kind of have to win this game. For Minnesota, this is a house money. Like, I don't think anyone's looking at them crazy if they lose. And non-conference game to the Jets, this is one of those like got to get a win. Going into Buffalo, coming into their building next week.
Maybe it is. We cover our team's bias. Hard to pick against the way the Vikings have been playing.
I know.
So I probably lean in that direction. But turn on the Jets. You do a tremendous job there. You're a great follow on Twitter. So thanks so much for your time. I'm so glad we could get back together. D3 forever. And we'll talk again soon, man.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, man.